Today, I would like to invite you to focus our reflection on what I would call a spiritual waste management. Spiritual waste management. We have to begin by saying, on the basis of our gospel today, that there is also such a thing as spiritual garbage, spiritual basura. At the last paragraph of the gospel, Jesus speaks about the things that can pollute our hearts and our minds, the things that pollute us inside. Yun yung tinatawag kong the spiritual wastes. Of course, the garbage or the trash that we are more familiar with are the material wastes that we usually dispose. Maraming klaseng basura, solid waste, liquid waste, gaseous waste. And we know that they can pollute the environment, the air, the water, the earth, if we don't manage our basura well. Well, thank God, nowadays, we have environmental advocates who teach us how to manage our wastes responsibly. Magandang timing ito because we're about to relaunch the season of creation, the beginning of September. Meaning we have to manage our basura in a manner that is not destructive of our common home. We have to learn to be more responsible, more mindful of our environments by managing our basura well, following some ecologically friendly waste management principles. Tatlo lang naman: segregate, compost, and recycle. Magkasama yung compost and recycle. But the gospel today convinces me that like material wastes, our spiritual basura also has to be managed well if we do not want them to pollute our lives. Alam nyo, sa Kapampangan, we have a word, a unique word for anger or resentment. We say, sukal-lub. Sukal-lub. And sukal for us is garbage. So sa Kapampangan, pag sinabi mong galit ako, what you're actually saying is, may basura ako sa loob. I have garbage inside. Isn't that interesting? Meaning, we have a notion of spiritual garbage. We are conscious of the fact that we also generate spiritual trash. And they can pollute our thoughts, our feelings, our words. As Jesus rightly points out in today's gospel. I think Jesus is also expecting his disciples to learn to manage our spiritual basura if we want to live a truly blessed life. One of the Beatitudes of Jesus, in the famous Sermon on the Mount, which is just 2 chapters from our today's gospel. Actually, today's gospel, bahagi pa rin yan ng Sermon on the Mount. But at the beginning, the introduction of the Sermon on the Mount, which is from chapter 5 to chapter 7 in St. Matthew, you read the Beatitudes. And one of the 8 Beatitudes says, "Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God." Mapalad ang dalisay ang puso, makikita nilang Diyos. That beatitude is presupposing that there are many instances in our lives when our hearts can be so clouded by anger, resentment, envy, pride, malice, fears, anxieties, insecurities, to such an extent that we are unable to see goodness around us. Nakapagdidilim ng paningin. Di ba yun yung sinasabi ng ibang napapasubo sa ginagawa nila? Nagdilim ang paningin. Our hearts and minds can be clouded. Mga pollutants yan. These inner pollutants can push us to commit murder, can push us to lie, to do false witnessing, or to steal, or to commit adultery, etc. In his commentary on the Ten Commandments, in the earlier part of the Sermon on the Mount, ito naman ay nasa chapter 6, Jesus is calling attention to what he calls the root causes of sin. And for Jesus, sin is the pollution of the soul. And so he says, in reaction to the Pharisees, who are too preoccupied with external cleanliness, external purity, and very strict regulations about food that may cause spiritual impurity daw. That is why you keep hearing about kosher and halal. Na parang the kind of food that you eat can make you spiritually impure. Jesus is reacting to that. Didn't you hear him say in the gospel, it is not what you put in your mouth that can make you unclean. It's rather what comes out from you, from your heart, through your thoughts, your feelings, your words, and your actions that can make you unclean, sabi ni Jesus. It is most certainly very hard to see God. Kaya tama yung beatitude, blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. Because it is really difficult to see God around you if we are so full of spiritual basura. Ill will can make us see wrong everywhere. In anything that our neighbors do, we can see something wrong if we are ill-willed. Sa Tagalog, the expression is masama ang loob, bad inside. Masama ang loob. And that's supposed to describe the feeling of a person who is nursing anger in his heart. Ibig sabihin, your perception of the outer world is colored by the sama ng loob, by what is inside you. Hindi ba? Totoo naman yun. Pag masama ang loob mo, lahat ng nakikita mo, sumasama din. I think the basic principles applied by ecological advocates for material waste management are applicable also for spiritual basura. Sabi ko nga, segregate, compost, and recycle. The ones that you have segregated, you either compost or recycle. Let's take a look at each one. Segregate. Ibig sabihin, sort out. Sa Tagalog, pagbukod-bukurin, paghiwa-hiwalayin. For spiritual waste, we also have to do sorting out. Kung papaanong sa basura, ibinubukod ang biodegradables and non-biodegradables, ganyan din with spiritual basura. We have to sort out between what comes from the good spirit and what comes from the evil spirit. Sometimes, even our thoughts are not purely ours. Minsan akala mo, ang iniisip mo yung iyo. You know, we're never sure of that, or we're sometimes not sure of that. We can be either guided by the good spirits or allow ourselves to be influenced by the evil one. Because we are spiritual beings ourselves, we interact with other spirits. Everything else gets so polluted inside us. If we do not know how to segregate or how to sort out our thoughts and our feelings, one form of spiritual segregating is distinguishing between the person and the action. Maraming beses nyo na narinig sa akin yun, di ba? Pag ang batang sasabihin niya sa nanay niya, galit ka sa akin eh. And the nanay will say, hindi anak, galit ako sa ginawa mo kasi love kita. Oh, that's a wise mother. Distinguishes between the person and the action. Just because I hate what you did doesn't mean I hate you. And sometimes I hate what you did precisely because I love you. Segregating ang tawag doon. And Jesus teaches us how to segregate. And that's His way of teaching us mercy. We hate the sin, but we love the sinner nevertheless, di ba? There are many examples of the ill effects of not learning how to do spiritual sorting out. Di ba naririnig natin kung minsan, road rage. Naggit-gitan lang sa kalsada, nagbarilan na. Or crimes of passion. At pag nahimasmasan, nagsisisi. You heard about one just recently, na-convict siya ng reclusion perpetua. Dahil sa galit niya, bam! Seems so easy. And then when they come to themselves, they say, my God, bakit ko ginawa yun? In Tagalog, we say, nagdilim ang paningin. Because you did not do sorting out. One of the most popular forms of therapy in America is called anger management. They know that people are capable of snapping and losing rationality when they are overcome by negative feelings. And this applies to all of us. Lahat tayo were vulnerable to this. And one of the forms of therapy that is usually recommended is to verbalize your feelings, to bring them into awareness or consciousness. Kasi yung feelings that come into your consciousness, yan na yung emotions. That's the difference between emotions and feelings. Yung emotions, you're more conscious of them. Writing down our raw feelings is a very good form of therapy. Pero may warning ako dyan. If you decide to mail it, or to text it, or to email it, please, send it to yourself, not to the person, because you might regret it. Di ba? Mahirap nang bawiin pag nasabi na. Sometimes, isang tulog lang. If you have written it down the following day, you're already laughing at yourself. You're probably already saying to yourself the following day, napaka-big deal naman ito. Ba't ba ako nagkaganyan? Naburyong yata ako. And we laugh at ourselves, which is good. It's good therapy. You can also express it through painting, or sports, or you can talk about it to someone trustworthy, yung hindi naman niya ipagsasabi kung kanino. The basic objective is to understand what these emotions are telling us about ourselves in order to know what to do about them. May mga taong akala nila porke nagalit sila, nagkasala na sila. Did you know, it is not a sin to get angry. It is what the feeling can drive you to do that can make it sinful. And St. Paul is saying that in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26. And I assign you to check it out. Sabi ni St. Paul, if you are angry, do not let it lead you to sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. Ibig sabihin, wag mong kimkimin hanggang kinabukasan. Don't let the sun go down with it. A second a second method of dealing with the spiritual basura is learning spiritual composting or recycling. There are spiritual wastes that are best dissolved and others that can be recycled. There are those that are best forgotten and those that need to be remembered. Waste management teaches us to do it selectively. Ayun yung key word, ha? Selectively. Some things are best allowed to be dissolved into oblivion. After all, hindi naman lahat ng bagay sa buhay natin ay kailangang tandaan. If we allow the negative memories to keep rewinding in our consciousness, they can keep us in a permanent kind of victimhood, a state of victimhood. Nabiktima ka na, pero sa kauulit, nauulit din ang pagiging biktima. You never get out of it. Walang healing pag ganon. The pain remains as fresh as when it happened the first time, when we allow the emotional wounds to fester. Kung baga sa sugat, nagnanaknak. And the spiritual infection can spread within us when we keep remembering what we should be forgetting. On the other hand, positive remembering is also part of spiritual waste management. Please don't forget that. It is a kind of recycling, creative recycling. Di ba katulad nung, let's say, yung timba mong plastic na basag na, you can turn it into a plastic bucket you can turn it into a plant pot. Ako nga, namimili ako ng yung mga discarded na plastic buckets. Ginagawa kong paso. Pwede pa palang gamitin. Well, you can do spiritual recycling also. You can bring the experience back to your awareness only to learn some lessons from them, to gain wisdom from the experience. You transform the negative experience into a positive energy that can make you stronger and make you more capable of facing or similar experiences in the future. Positive remembering, ang tawag dyan. The whole point to it is to aspire for healing. And healing is becoming whole again. To remember in the sense of putting oneself together again in one piece. Well, many negative experience, parang binabasag ang pagkatao natin. The opposite of remembering is dismembering. Positive remembering can lead to reconciliation. But that can happen only if it is accompanied by the humility to admit our shortcomings. Aminin pag nagkulang. The humility to be sorry and to make amends for the wrong that we have done. And above all, the humility to forgive or to seek forgiveness for them. Ayun, there you are, lesson for the day, spiritual waste management. Please, do not allow your souls to be polluted. Mag-aral ng segregating, composting, and recycling our spiritual basura if you want a healthy spiritual life.